can the septic tank be pumped in the winter? And the quick and easy answer is yes. In any of the cold weather states, anybody that we talk to across the country, it's always the same scenario. As soon as the temperature drops, we start getting into the winter months, the phone stops ringing. And I personally think that it is because people think that we don't work in the wintertime. It's so funny. It's really the 40-degree mark. That 40 degrees, it goes below 40, the phone doesn't ring. The next day, those temperatures clip up just a little bit, 42, 43 degrees, the phone rings. So I think it's just, people, it's just they either don't think about it when it gets cold, they're thinking about other things, or they just think that we don't work in the winter. We do. And we do a lot of things to try and keep our drivers going. We hate having to lay drivers off. Some winters we end up having to, some we're able to keep on going through the winter, stay busy enough that we can keep everybody going. But a few things that you want to think about in the wintertime. Yes, we can clean the tanks in the winter, but it is slightly, there's some things that you want to think about to be helpful in the wintertime. Number one, if we've had this happen before, where the homeowner is trying to be helpful, they know the location of where the tank is in the yard, and we got 6, 8, 12 inches of snow on the ground. They go out the night before, shovel off the area, make it all nice and neat, so we can get right to the tank. We don't got to deal with the snow. But we come out the next morning, go to start digging up the lids. It's hard as a rock. The snow acts as an insulator. So as long as there's good fluffy snow on top of the ground, it'll actually keep the ground from freezing all winter long. The only time we really get into any problems is when we lose that snow. And so when that homeowner cleared all that snow away from the ground, overnight it was cold, it froze the ground solid. I don't know how many inches of frost drove right into the ground. We couldn't access it. And we told them, all right, put the snow all back on there, we'll come back in a week or two, and we'll be able to get at it. So don't worry about the snow. Leave it. Your pumper will be able to clear it out of the way. It actually, if the tank is within 12 inches or less of the surface, we'll actually start seeing some snow melt, and it can make it easier for us to locate the tank when we can see where the snow is melted in one area. And sometimes, and if your tank is real shallow, you know this because you've seen it every winter. The snow will completely melt, and that's just because of the warm water, the constant flow of water coming in from the house. It just creates enough residual heat into the ground there. It melts the snow, and we love when we pull up and see this perfect rectangle of no snow in the yard. Number one, we know right where the tank's at, but we like it even more because we know it's not going to be that deep in the ground. It's going to be an easy dig. So that's number one. Don't clear the snow away. Another thing that you want to think about, snow is a great insulator, but if it gets packed down, it'll actually work against us. So you want to be mindful of where your tank is located. Especially, we've seen it where a homeowner has a dog and they just run the same track all the time, and they just pack that snow down on this path constantly. And we've run into it where it just so happens that path is going right over the top of one of the lids. And The rest of the tank is soft, no problem. We can access that. But where that path was packed down, that snow was packed down nice and tight. It drove the frost into the ground, and we could not get through that frozen ground. Certainly not digging by hand. So be mindful if there's somewhere that you walk often, or you've got an animal that's constantly walking the same path. If it's over the top of the septic tank, you might want to find a way to reroute that path. If you can put something that's kind of blocking it, if it's a dog, it makes them walk around the septic tank, just to make sure that we're able to get access. Other things to think about, kind of common sense, but sometimes people don't think about it. Our trucks are not made for driving in the snow, and we can run into issues with driveways, especially if it's a dirt driveway, and the snow just gets packed down on it. And even when it's being plowed, sometimes you have that packed snow underneath. It can be really difficult for our trucks to get up. Even it doesn't take much of an incline for it to make that an issue, and for whatever reason, the trucks being top heavy or whatever it is, when we start sliding, it doesn't usually end up being just a nice slide forward. We start sliding off the side, and once we get off the side of a driveway, it can become a big issue. It might sink in the ground there, and we certainly don't want to deal with it. You don't want to deal with the mess of, we've sunk in the ground next to the driveway. So if we just had a snow, make sure that you get the driveway cleared. If it's possible, throw some salt down. That will help make the job so much smoother for us. We can get in, we can get your tank cleaned, we can get out without making a mess, without having any problems, no hassle. Just something that you can think about, just to make our lives a little bit easier. So again, tanks can be pumped in the winter. We just got to do a little extra thinking in some aspects, but outside of some of those items, your septic system is operating just the same any time of year. Once we get access to the tank, the cleaning process is exactly the same. One thing we might ask is that, and we'll run into this in the winter, where the outside water spigots are turned off, prevent freezing. If we can coordinate that together, where you can have that turned on, we can get our garden hose hooked up and help us get cleaned up when we're done. That's certainly helpful. It's not the end of the world. We've got techniques we can do to make sure we're getting the tanks cleaned properly and keep from making a mess. But outside of that, everything else is pretty much identical. So the tanks can be pumped in the winter. You can call. Please call. We would love your work any time of year. Where we really appreciate it in the winter time to help keep our employees busy.